Hey, welcome to our explainer. Today, we're diving into a text that's on millions of bookshelves, but is also, one of the most misunderstood publications in history. So let's just jump right in.
So let's start with the most basic question you can ask. What is the Bible really? I mean, it seems simple, right? It's a big old book. Well, the answer is way more complex and honestly a lot more interesting than you might think.
Yeah, because here's the thing. To put it really simply, the Bible isn't a book. At least not in the way we normally think of a book, Like written by one person, at one time, for one single reason.
A way better way to wrap your head around it is to think of it like a library. An entire collection of different texts. We're talking stories, poems, laws, letters, prophecies, all written by many different people in different languages across thousands of years.
And what's so cool is that this whole library idea is baked right into the name itself. The word Bible actually comes from this Greek phrase, ta biblia. And that doesn't mean the book, singular. No, it means the books, plural. It's the term that Greek-speaking Jews used way back when to talk about their sacred writings.
Okay, so for this first part, we're going to do just that. We're going to unpack this incredible ancient library and see what's actually on the shelves.
Let's start in the oldest wing of the library, the collection known as the Hebrew Bible, or the Tanakh. This is, the foundational scripture for Judaism, but it's also a massive chunk of the Christian Bible too.
So that name, Tanakh, is actually an acronym. It's made from the first letters of its three main sections. T for Torah, which means teaching, N for Nevi'im, or the prophets, and K for Ketuvim, which means writings.
So first up, you've got the Torah, often called the 5 books of Moses. Then come the Nevi'im, which are the books of the prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah. And finally, you get the Ketuvim, a whole mix of stuff called the writings. Think Psalms, Proverbs, the story of Job, all that.
Right, but here's a crucial point. This library wasn't built in a day. The process of deciding which books officially belonged, that's a process called canonization, it took an incredibly long time. The Torah was pretty much set around the 5th century BCE, but the last section, the writings, wasn't finalized until the 2nd century CE. I mean, we're talking about a process that stretched over 600 years. That's just wild.
So how do we even know these texts are that old? Well, amazing discoveries like the Dead Sea Scrolls help a lot. Found back in 1947, these are basically the oldest copies of the Hebrew Scriptures we've ever found, and they prove that these texts were being carefully passed down more than 2,000 years ago.
Okay, so now fast forward a bit. With the rise of Christianity, a whole new collection of books starts coming together, basically creating a second major wing in our biblical library.
Now, the really important link between the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Scriptures was a translation called the Septuagint. You see, a lot of the early Christians spoke Greek, so they pretty much all used this Greek version of the Hebrew texts. And that Septuagint became the foundation for what Christians now call the Old Testament. So these new Christian writings, what we call the New Testament, they brought a totally different flavor. You get whole new kinds of literature. There are the Gospels, 4 different narratives about the life and teachings of Jesus. Then there's the Acts of the Apostles, which is basically a history of the very first church. You've got the epistles, which are letters to different Christian groups. And it all wraps up with the book of Revelation, this wild apocalyptic prophecy.
And no surprise here, just like the Tanakh, this collection didn't just appear overnight. It started with people telling stories about Jesus, and then those stories got written down. Those texts, the Gospels and letters, were passed around between different communities for decades. And finally, by about the 4th century, the official list of 27 books we know as the New Testament was pretty much locked in.
And this is where things get really interesting. Because if the Bible's a library, not everyone checks out the same books. Different religious traditions have different official collections.
That official list of books, that's what we call a canon. A biblical canon is just the specific set of writings that a religious community says, yep, these are our authoritative, divinely inspired scriptures.
So just how different are we talking? Well, have a look at this. The Jewish Tanakh has 24 books, which is the same stuff as the 39 books in a Protestant Old Testament, they just group them differently. But from there, a Catholic Bible has 73 books, an Eastern Orthodox Bible has around 76, maybe 78, and the Ethiopian Orthodox canon has 81. So what gives?
So, where does the difference come from? It's pretty much all in the Old Testament. Protestant traditions base their Old Testament on the books in the original Hebrew Tanakh. But Catholic and Orthodox traditions, they base theirs on that Greek Septuagint translation we talked about, which had some extra books that weren't in the original Hebrew collection, books that are sometimes called the Apocrypha.
Okay, so we've got this ancient, super complex library with different versions floating around. So, for our last section, let's talk about the incredible journey these books have been on and the truly massive impact they've had on the world.
And to understand that impact, you really just have to start with this one number. Over 5 times billion copies sold. That makes the Bible, by a huge margin, the best-selling publication of all time. I mean, there's just nothing else like it in human history. Nothing.
And that kind of reach, well, it's had a huge influence on, well, pretty much everything. It's shaped laws and politics. It's been the foundation for ideas about human rights. It led to the founding of some of the first universities. It's inspired some of the most famous art and literature ever made. Heck, even the way we talk, so many common phrases we use every day come straight out of these texts.
But it's not a simple story. That influence is, well, it's complicated, and it's often full of contradictions. There's a quote from Professor John Riches that really sums it up. The Bible has inspired some of the absolute greatest achievements in human history, but it's also been used to justify some of the absolute worst.
You know, a massive piece of the puzzle here is translation. Think about it. Right now, the full Bible is in over 700 languages. The New Testament is available in almost 1,800, and at least some part of the Bible has been translated into over 4,000 different languages. That's how its stories and ideas have reached almost every culture on the planet.
So after all this, what is the Bible? Is it a sacred text for billions of believers around the world? Is it a priceless historical artifact that gives us a window into the ancient past? Is it a literary masterpiece that has shaped how we tell stories? Or is it a cultural cornerstone of our entire civilization? The incredible thing is, the answer to all of those questions seems to be yes.